about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
All right. Welcome back to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. 1-877-DOCDALI. So when I had a patient who was vegetarian or even more strictly a vegan, I was a little envious of them because I can't do that. I love meat. I love steak. I love the texture of steak. I love the juices. I love the cap, you know, like on a piece of prime rib, a ribeye, I like the cap and the fat marbled in it, and like a burger and you know, chicken, and I just like to sink my teeth into meat. I'm just that kind of girl. Right? Sorry, just give me drumstick, give me a gyro strip, give me a kebab. I'm in heaven. Just I don't even need chocolate. I'm good. But you know, seeing patients be able to have that control and get excited about a piece of broccoli and tofu and all that. I admired them. And they were healthy. They were fairly healthy. It's interesting. The vegans were slim. Some of the vegetarians weren't because they would compensate with carbs and eat a lot of pasta and all that. And so, you know, we've learned that the sugar content as opposed to the fat content could be just as obesity inducing. But I was pretty impressed. Every now and then, though, I had a parent, though, whose baby was vegan. And I was like, well, you know, here's the only thing with that. You know, we want to make sure they get their essential amino acids. Is that healthy? You know, is that the healthiest way to do it? But I didn't have a problem if they were breastfeeding. And if you do have a choice of, you know, vegan or whatever, breast milk can provide essential nutrients to that baby as long as you are getting essential nutrients. But I know a lot of people are like, wait a second here. Is that abuse? You know, making a child be vegetarian or vegan? Well, the average baby doesn't necessarily, you know, in the olden days, eat zebra or ox or yak or deer. I mean, they would, you know, breastfeed. And so when the study came out saying, and remember, in the olden days, you would breastfeed your child well into 2, 3, 4 years old. So there is a study saying that your vegetarian and vegan babies, and I apologize, my allergies are acting up, that they, up until the age of 2 years, in terms of that study, grew just as nicely as their meat-eating, hot dog-eating peers. And this was a study done at Ben Gurion University, where they looked at 1.2 million infants over 10 years. And they said that the infants who had vegetarian and vegan households grew in trajectories that were nearly identical to those of their carnivorous peers by age 2. They have omnivorous, but I think they meant also, yeah. Anyway, the peer-reviewed research was led by Karim Avital, a clinical dietitian and doctoral student, and Professor Danit Shahar, both at Ben Gurion University of the Negev. They published this in JAMA Network Open, and they said in the context of developed countries, these findings are highly reassuring. This is, they say the data suggests that with proper environment, plant-based diets do not compromise the fundamental physical development of infants. The health ministry provided data from 2014 to 2023. They tracked the development of approximately 70% of children in the country. They say it's a huge mass of data that we had access to. And they said 95% of babies are brought to a Tipat Halav baby wellness center. And it was an amazing statistic. So they looked at their weight, height, head circumference over the first 2 years of life, then compared them to babies where they had both vegetables and meat, omnivorous, vegetarian families and vegan families. And so the research found that it was interesting. They actually found that infants of vegan households had higher odds of being underweight in the first 2 months. But then the disparity was diminished and was then no longer statistically significant by 24 months or 2 years of age. Now, do we have data after that? Also, do we have an antihistamine? Because I got to tell you, these allergies really stink. Oh my gosh. I did not want to have to talk about allergies in February, but I got to tell you, I'm already there. Whew. I'll probably have to get my Kenalog shot. We'll talk about allergies just because you guys are just hearing it in my voice. But, going to these plant-based diets, I'm not saying I want every baby vegan, because I'd like to see the data when they're 3, 4, 5. But, when you have an infant, you're not really giving them a lot of meat. I never gave the kids steak. I didn't want them eating hot dogs. Now, they might have had peanut butter. I wanted to make sure they didn't have a peanut allergy, so I introduced peanut early on. So they had peanut butter. They had, milk. They had grains, and they had vegetables and fruit. And so I did it. I also made green noodles. Green noodles was a pesto and noodles. So I made pasta for them. Did they have some chicken fingers? Not a lot before 2 years old. So this isn't that, I can't believe they're studying this. Really not that uncommon. Plus, when you look at a lot of religious families, in Israel, you have many Orthodox individuals who follow kashrut, where you're not supposed to mix milk and meat. The Bible phrases, you should not boil a kid in its mother's milk. It's a respect issue. But also, when you look at the digestive studies, when they say if you are going to have you don't have meat and then followed immediately by a dairy. You could have meat after a dairy, but not the other way around. Well, when you look at the digestion of it, meat digests slower. So it's amazing how much science is in the Bible when you kind of look at that, especially when you look at the rules to protect people from trichomoniasis and cigarette poisoning. Sorry, I don't never pronounce that right. From the dorsal vein of fish, undercooked seafood, undercooked pork can kill you. So it's interesting how they protected people in the Old Testament, saying don't do this. The same thing with the Quran. You're not supposed to eat pork. Why? Because if it wasn't cooked properly, people would die. So and it's considered unclean. So trust me, I like Canadian bacon. I can, I get, a ham steak. But we're not supposed to eat it. So, for a 2-year-old, this study isn't that shocking. What we want is a balanced diet, and we want to make sure they're still getting their essential amino acids and they're still getting good protein in their vegetarian or vegan diet. And that's what's important. Interesting study. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Let's face it, guys. We're living in times where the truth is becoming more suppressed and censorship is increasing at an alarming rate, especially on social media platforms. It's Clyde, and I want to tell you about a safe and secure digital playground we put together just for you. It's Aftermath.media. You get access to thousands of Ground Zero archives and podcasts, along with our private social media groups with your basic membership starting at only $7 a month. Each subscription includes tech support, access to the RSS feeds, along with our own chat room and Telegram channel. In addition, the premium membership includes research study groups, webinars, a document and movie library, a live video stream of Ground Zero, a monthly Zoom chat with me, and other bonus content. Be sure to check out our yearly specials as well. Sign up today while you're thinking about it. Sign up at Aftermath.media. Again, that's Aftermath.media.
Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Welcome back to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Doc-Dali, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. And big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So I visited Buckingham Palace. I didn't get to go on the inside. I was on the outside. It was beautiful. Big. And, I've watched The Crown. And I'm fascinated how here we are in 2026 and there's a king, like a King Charles. And, I've been fond of the royal family, but I haven't known much about them. Most of my, I guess, opinion of them had been based on Lady Di, who later then became Princess Diana. And so as a kid, I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, okay, so the monarchy helps people and they go out and they do a lot of things, to help with, world peace and world hunger and all that. And I just didn't know much about the monarchy. I didn't know, does every family have its drama and dysfunctionality? Absolutely. And so The Crown, even though that's not a documentary, that kind of, I guess, opened people's eyes to what possible drama could be within. I think it was obvious, even to me as a child, that Prince Charles at the time did not really seem to look like the love-struck groom, with the beautiful Princess Diana. Why is that? Why, and so, and was it just because, I just thought, maybe in the UK, you're not supposed to look like Americans do, where they're all googly eyed and all that. And then, I guess our instincts were right. That she wasn't the love of his life. Camille was, and he later gets to be with her. And then you see him happy and you see more facial expressions than you ever have. So I think we see what, we're allowed to see, what the monarchy allows us to see. But the rumblings of Andrew, the prince, the younger brother of King Charles, and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein has been very, very troublesome. And then when you saw pictures with him and, possible victims, and it just started to raise a lot of, red flags, a lot of head scratching. And so today, as most of us have learned, he has been arrested. And Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, I think, was he second or third in line to the throne? No, before King Charles had, William and Harry. Now he's seventh in line to the throne? Now no more, because I think he's been excommunicated from the monarchy. He is now in jail. No more Windsor Great Park 30-room mansion. And so from what we understand, he spent the majority of his 66th birthday in police custody. It was no bigger than a box room in a 3-bed semi, according to Met Police Sergeant Graham Watone. And Daily Mail is saying there's no facility for any preferential treatment in any custody suite I've ever been in. You can't have an upgraded room. You can't get upgraded meals. You get what's there microwaved, which I think is right. I don't think, somebody of the monarchy or somebody of the U.S. Congress or whatever, needs to have a presidential palace penthouse treatment. Do they need to have protection? Yes. Dangerous things happen in jail. Should we make sure that everybody, every single person that goes to jail is protected? I hate hearing that people get stabbed and killed in jail. I think every prisoner, because they're vulnerable, needs to be able to be protected and have their own private room, cell. But Prince Andrew was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. That's what they called it, misconduct. See, the British know how to say everything very delicately. It's misconduct in public office. Now, where that translates into, possibly being a part of the sex trafficking ring and underage sex, and with victims. And also, I believe he has been accused of giving Jeffrey Epstein UK secrets. So police descended upon Wood Farm in Sandringham, Norfolk, and then he's been living there after he was expelled from, I believe, Windsor Park or whatever. And then now he is in jail. He's been arrested. He's in custody. I think he might be able to make bail. I don't know. But if he does get tried and this moves on to the courts, I think he's going to be tried in a royal court. And then if he is found guilty, he could potentially spend life in prison. And so from what I understand, he was read his rights, all that. And then, so it's interesting. I don't know why, as I said before, it took this long. Where we are with this is my guess is Prince Andrew, if he is guilty, has a lot of information. And it doesn't seem like investigators are getting the information they need from Ghislaine Maxwell and other people. I mean, she got to be at a high-end police or a high-end prison facility, but I just don't think they're getting enough. And so my guess is they may work a deal with Andrew. Why was he arrested now? Wasn't he? I mean, we've seen pictures of him, and there's been, the royal family acted quicker than it seemed like the current police force. Well, maybe it's because they see a potential way to get more information. And if his choice is life in jail or him being able to go back to his residence on home arrest or other, or a lighter sentence, if he provides information, that's where I think this is going to go. And what also is really scary about this whole situation is everybody's talking about the Epstein files, and they're talking about the victims of there's more. There's more victims out there. There are current sex trafficking rings. Jeffrey Epstein was not the first person to do this or the last. And where did he get the idea from? Where did he get the structure, the protocol? Who then followed and copycatted Jeffrey Epstein's way of doing it? Apparently, there's some process that people are following because it's been done before and it's currently being done. And I'm glad this is being brought to light. I hope that all the victims get restitution, be able to heal, be able to recover from this. But where are there other current traffickings going on? And it's frightening to think that this is something that can be covered up, can be and even more frightening that people we see in the news all the time that interact with politicians, that interact with stars and had there was Whoopi Goldberg. I don't think Whoopi Goldberg had anything to do with the sex trafficking ring, but her name is brought up in the Epstein files. Why? Because I think there was somebody wanted to borrow her plane or rent her plane, or she needed to rent a plane, whatever. So this Jeffrey Epstein had octopus arms with so many different circles that it's going to be very, very difficult to determine who engaged in that. And, they're going by emails and texts. But, did some people use code? Did they just have one-on-one conversations? It's a mess. And as I said before, it's going to take years to hash out. But, seeing a royal, somebody of the monarchy, I think this is the first time in 400 years anyone's been arrested from the monarchy. To see this happen means, the UK is, I think, wanting answers and needing more in this investigation. I know people are saying, you see, the UK could arrest. Why isn't America arresting? Well, they can't arrest Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, there's no proof. This had to do with a plane. Didn't have to do, from what we understand, with the trafficking plane. This was just, Jeffrey Epstein had business dealings. And so you can't just arrest anybody he had an email with. And then if the email says, oh, yeah, I have somebody to set you up with on a blind date. Yeah, is it a blind date, or was this one of the trafficked victims? And somebody could say, yeah, but I didn't know they were underage. I didn't know they were trafficked. I mean, my advice to any of you is if somebody says they have somebody pretty to hook you up with, and you don't usually get pretty girls, that person is under duress, or there's some sort of prostitution or pimping going on, and don't do it. If you can't get your own dates, don't do it. That's how it looked like it was happening. People were saying, "Oh, I want a blonde," or "I want this," or "I want," and Jeffrey Epstein, to keep that closeness and to possibly be able to later blackmail them, got ingrained through their sexual activities. That's pretty frightening. He was able to wiggle himself into the royal family if Andrew is found guilty. Scary stuff. 1-877-Doc-Dolly. Don't go away.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
in many states, the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts. Due to a cleaner burn, there are less hydrocarbons and particulate matter in your exhaust. This reduces the blockage of your diesel particulate filter. Using Diesel Extreme generates 83% less DPF regeneration. The 6-in-1 Diesel Extreme formula also includes the most concentrated detergent on the market, lubricity enhancer, water demulsifier, rust and corrosion inhibitors, and a fuel stabilizer.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com.
Hot Shot Secret. Powered by science.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Dolly Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube. Click like and subscribe. So, it's interesting. I go to sports and I go to the Olympics and all that, so I don't have to watch the news and I don't have to deal with politics. I love watching sports just in general. And it's nice because it's about sports. Well, as with everything these days, some reporter, the media, wants to just goad these, athletes and put them in the deer in spotlights, headlights, making them answer political questions. And so we're starting to see the reporters say, do you, like what America's doing? How do you feel about ICE? How do you feel about, and if I was advising, any of the Olympians that I was coaching who are trying to, get through a short program figure skating or whatever, to say, look, I'm grateful that I get to be in the Olympics. I'm grateful that my country chose me to represent them. And I just need to focus on, the task at hand. Next question. But instead, the reporters want to get some drama. They want to get some clickbait. So they're getting trying to get answers out of Olympians. Now, some Olympians do want to express their political beliefs. They're our First Amendment right. They have every right to do that. But I think some are feeling forced to pick a side. And so when you start to hear, Amber Glenn describing herself as a woke bee and things like that. And I mean, Amber Glenn is an amazing, amazing figure skater, but I don't distract her. I mean, she fell to 13th place. Can these reporters lay off? Can everybody just kind of let the Olympians be Olympians? Because these people have to do what they have to do. But there's now this discussion of, if you're going to represent the United States and you are going to get the honor of being an American, should you go to the Olympics and badmouth America? And, and so people are saying, do these Olympians need to show patriotism? On the other end, one thing about America is how we have freedom of speech. That's what makes America different. Whereas when you look at people from other countries and you're thinking to yourself, boy, they're so oppressed. They can't even say what they want. They can't even speak out, and they feel so oppressed. We're lucky we get to speak free. So what's the balance? We have freedom of speech. We honor it. We are blessed with it. And I want anybody to feel like they could speak freely. On the other end, if you get the gift of representing America, USA, and all its amazing beauty and splendor and freedom, would love to hear from you guys. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. You know what's interesting? How I look at it is the media needs to step back, stop trying to infuse politics into this. Let Olympics be about the Olympics because, look at Eileen Gu. Eileen Gu is an American. Her mom is Chinese. She was born in America. She goes to Stanford, but she's representing China. So people are criticizing her for not speaking out about China's atrocities. And, she has the freedom of speech. But she's representing China, even though she lives in America. And I know it's kind of confusing for people. And so are we going to expect, and are Olympians now tasked with needing to, in this forum, speak out about what their country's doing? And does that just put too much on them? If somebody doesn't like what's happening in Italy, or somebody doesn't like, let's say the athletes from Great Britain say, I don't know why it took so long for us to arrest Prince Andrew, or I don't know why we're arresting him. Is now that the job of the Olympian to be out there saying, okay, I'm here, I'm doing my sport, all right, but this is what I think of my country. I don't know. I'm really mixed on this because, as far as I'm concerned, you're blessed with being able to represent the country. You are given a huge gift. You are a gift to us. You are an Olympian, and you representing us. We are indebted to you. You need to be protected from all the canceling and I think the coaches tell them to stay off social media because you have all the haters and all that. We should be protecting our Olympians from being put in a position where they're going to get caught saying something on mic, and then they're going to have all this hate, and then they won't be able to do their sport. And I'm not saying Amber Glenn's fall, she didn't fall, but her drop from being a gold medalist contender with her triple axel, falling to 13th place because one of the triple loops she couldn't do, which I think is kind of unfair because I really do think she's gold medal material. But, I'm not saying that all happened because, reporters put on them, give us your political beliefs. And I understand, I think she is the first pansexual to be representing America in the United States Olympics. So I get that somebody is going to be asking her, about her, sexual orientation and all that, which I think we all deserve privacy, whether we're heterosexual, homosexual, pansexual, asexual. I think our sexual choices, should be private, but I get that if she chooses to, she wants to represent the LGBTQAI plus community. And again, being American, we have the gift of being able to speak freely. But I see where the Olympics is going. And it's going to ruin the Olympics like it's already ruining Hollywood. Where now these Hollywood actors and actresses who know nothing about foreign policy or whatever start speaking out. And mind you, you're allowed to, it's now making people go, you know what? I don't want politics. Just like Jimmy, not Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel's a funny guy. But if his monologue is bringing up Trump 15 times, people who hate Trump don't want to hear about Trump. People who love Trump don't want to hear him making fun of Trump. Where's the comedy? Same thing with the Olympics. If people want to see the sport and they want to see you do well in the sport and want to hear your opinion on the sport, and, how did you train? How are you an Olympian? What advice can you give younger, wannabes? Who inspired you? Was it Nancy Kerrigan? Was it Tara Lipinski? Was it Sasha? Who inspired you, and how are you here? What makes an Olympian? I mean, there's tons of questions that the media can ask. You know, Ilian Malinin, who's been called the quad god, and put that pressure on him, and then he falls twice. You know, how were you able to perform the quadruple axel? You know, what do you think is your secret sauce? What gave you that, how are you able to do it? What do you think? What do you credit? And yeah, some people say, I thank God, I thank my coach, I thank my country, and yeah, maybe that might be boring, but at least it doesn't get them now in a heap of this back and forth where, they're entrenched in politics. Again, if somebody feels like they want to speak freely, Americans allow that. We embolden that. We want to encourage people to have free thinking. And so, you have a microphone and this is something you want to do, we will protect that right. But if reporters are trying to get this out of you and try to, make Olympics about politics and try to make Olympians who have been training and starving themselves, with not being able to eat what they want to eat because they're in training and not able to sit there and entrench themselves in geopolitics and foreign policy and now being asked about it. Come on, so. Yeah, I'd like to hear from what you think. 1-877 Dr. Dolly. Don't go away.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
As an organ donor, your story doesn't have to end. The good in you can live on. In fact, you could save up to 8 lives and restore sight and health for many more. Sign up right now online as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You'll be happy you did. And just maybe, someone else will be happy too. Go to organdonor.gov. It saves lives. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
Welcome back. We are back on the Dr. Dolly Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. So I do mostly telemedicine these days after Obamacare, changed the way patients, would hopefully have insurance pay their doctor bills. Instead, they had high deductibles and all that. I went to teach, and because I do full-time radio now, I see patients on telemedicine, which is a very nice schedule for me. And telemedicine has exploded, and I've talked to you guys about that, how many of your insurance companies really make telemedicine more attractive to you from a financial standpoint, although we still recommend you see a doctor in person because there's so much more you get out of an exam, and there's so much more can be found than what happens over a telephone or a video call. But I'm really, really grateful that we have means for people to be able to talk to us doctors, etc. and be able to get care if they're stuck in a snowstorm or whatever. They may not be able to go and pick up their medications, but at least they could talk to a medical provider. But interestingly, as computers really got entrenched in medicine, patients started to get nervous about their privacy and about who has access to their information. So years ago, as electronic medical records was starting to take over paper charts, patients felt kind of comfortable with the paper chart. They could see the chart. They could ask for the chart to be destroyed once the medical board allows you after a certain number of years. And they felt like, if they did tell you something private or whatever, it was kept under lock and key. Nobody would see it. Nobody would hack into it. They had some privacy. When doctors were told they had to ask parents about guns in the house, that made people very, very nervous. They're like, you're typing that in, you're putting that into an electronic system. And there were a lot of patients who hesitated on wanting to speak about guns. So how I handled it, because I learned, early on that, most of the people that take CCWs or get their CCWs or whatever, they know how to clean the gun. They know about gun safety. But I think everybody could use the reminder. So how I approached it is I just gave everybody the gun safety speech, whether you had a gun or not. You didn't have to admit to me if you had a gun. Didn't have to. Just, I would teach. I go, look, in case you do have a gun, these are the steps I want to make sure you take. Have it locked up. There's been cases where a cleaning lady comes in, thinks the gun is a toy, puts it in the toy box, and then a child took it and shot himself with it, or, kids getting access to it. So, even if this doesn't apply to you if you don't have a gun, think about this with knives, any sort of weapons in the house. Sometimes it's somebody else that may accidentally put it in, and kids are curious. And so I would teach them all about gun safety, gun safes. When you clean a gun, unload it first, and that kind of thing. So nobody felt like I was vetting them, interrogating them, and everybody then got the speech. But boy, were people hesitant. Then, because during, I believe, one of the Democratic primaries, there were some Congress people talking about how, people with mental illness should not have guns. Okay. If somebody is mentally unstable, if somebody is a risk or a threat to others, that we understand the logic behind that. But what about a government deciding to accuse somebody of having mental illness because they're wearing a Great America, Make America Great Again hat? So now people started to get a little nervous. Now, I closed my office in 2016, so it was before the 2016, election. But already people were nervous about, okay, wait a second. Did you put that, in the chart that you were diagnosing me with anxiety or depression? Well, you came in having depression, anxiety. You wanted a medication for it. And that, and I'm like, but the chart hasn't gone into a computer yet. It's still a paper chart. They're like, yeah, don't put that into a computer because I don't want the government seeing that diagnosis and then later taking away my gun. And so there's been a lot of skepticism, and the skepticism continues to grow now that it's not a private chart or information between you and a doctor. Patients get very upset that they go, look, I want to tell a doctor something, but they're going to write it down. I don't want them to write it down. It's interesting. We look at this mental health crisis and we see so many people with anxiety and depression. And one thing that people aren't talking about is a lot of people that need help, that want help, won't get it because they don't want it written down. They don't want a psychologist saying, has this divorce made you so upset that sometimes you wish your wife was dead? They don't want to answer that question and have that in writing. They might want to talk privately and say, look, but the job of a psychologist is to make sure there's no homicidal ideation, suicidal ideation. But patients are savvy to this going, well, but I don't want anything in writing. And so you start to see patients have very superficial conversations with their doctor, with their psychologist, or decide to not get seen at all. And I had a patient the other day. she was calling up for dizziness. And so I was asking her when her last period was. And she goes, I don't give that information out because I don't trust the government. I'm like, okay. And so I wrote, declined to say, not a problem. But I wanted to ask her a follow-up question, as to what can the government do to us if they know when our last period was? I'm always willing to learn. I'm not saying this to criticize her, but I talk about my period all the time. I don't have one anymore, but I mean, I was always very open, coming to class going, guys, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Right. I'm having my period. Just everybody leave me alone for the next few hours. I'm crappy. Leave me alone. I mean, I would kind of just set the stage. What could be, and I'm noticing a lot of women do not want to give their last menstrual period. And I remember one person was very upset going, I don't understand why you're asking me that. I go, well, because if there's a chance you're pregnant, I can't give certain classes of medications to you. Oh, I'm not pregnant. Just trust me on that. Well, I can, but the problem is my medical license. If I give you something and you actually are pregnant, so I'll give you something that's fairly pregnancy safe. I'm not pregnant. I know, but I can't do, because, how did we do it in person? If we were going to, run a test or do something that could possibly hurt a fetus, we always ran a pregnancy test. Every surgery, every procedure I had to do a pregnancy test first. But now that it's telemedicine, we're trusting what somebody's saying. But now when somebody says they don't even want to give that information because they don't trust the government, medicine is really starting to break down. New York Post has this article saying TikTok has been tracking our every move, even when we're not on the app. Now, that's frightening. If our apps, and we've been talking about this, are tracking us, even if we think we're shutting things down, I know the phone is listening to us because every time I say, hey, Siri, it listens and it says, yes, can I help you? I have the male. My husband has the British female. Yes, Corey, how can I help you? I'm like, really? Really? You find that sexy? Really? He's like, well, it's better than yours. Yours is like, yeah, hello. How can I help you? Yeah, he does sound kind of sexy, my Siri guy. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But, nobody's trusting the computer anymore. And so when patients ask, look, I'm calling in telemedicine, they're asking me for pictures. I'm submitting pictures. How do I know, it's not going to get hacked? Well, telemedicine companies have to use the utmost, strictest software protections. And I have not seen a telemedicine company hacked, thank God. But patients are, starting to say, you know what, I'm not going to bring this up. I'm going to say I have something else. And I told you one of the reasons why Z-Paks were asked for so ubiquitously is some people actually had symptoms of an STI, but they didn't want that going into the computer. So they'll say they have bronchitis and say, I need a Z-Pak because I have bronchitis. Well, we don't really treat bronchitis with Z-Paks because the majority of bronchitises are viral. But, if we're not going to be getting the right information, we doctors can't do what we need to do. But if patients don't trust the system, then it's going to be a mess. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, don't go away.
Can you believe, with all the recent violent protests, looting, and destruction, some areas are considering either defunding or abolishing the police? At a time when America's neighborhoods need the protection of police the most, some elected officials would rather create more chaos by playing politics. If you're sick of elected officials caving in to demands of the radical left, you're not alone. It's time we stand up and declare our support for local police. The majority of police officers are important partners in protecting our God-given rights. If you prefer freedom over chaos, then learn how you can help protect the local police that serve your community. Call today and request your free Support Your Local Police info packet. Dial 800-JBS-USA-1. That's 800-JBS-USA-1. Request your free Support Your Local Police info packet by calling 800-JBS-USA-1 today.